Hello, all you wonderful tutors. This is Garrett Butler from the Rockville Reading, Writing, and Language Center, and this will be a quick tutorial on the difference between directive and non-directive tutoring and how to do that effectively. So, as a quick definition of terms, directive tutoring is basically just teaching what you do when you're grading a paper. You identify and correct the student's errors. Non-directive tutoring is what we do when we're trying to tutor a student and get them to do their own writing and work. It's when we are allowing the student the opportunity to correct their errors or even identify their errors that are common in their writing. So maybe we start off with directive tutoring early in a session, but ideally, eventually, we're getting the student to identify their errors and especially correct their own errors so that they get practice with the things that are troubling them and actually make some progress. So this has been something that I think is especially challenging moving from the face-to-face to the e-tutoring environment where it's purely text-based. But as a general rule of thumb, what I've found is you should try to do what you would do if you were sitting across from the student if you're trying to do non-directive tutoring. Think about what are the questions you would ask or the topics you would start discussing that would lead the student to identify and or correct their own error. So let's take a look at a couple examples. A wide range of provided mathematical courses from topology to complex analysis enables me to build a solid background in mathematics and develop a mindset of a sophisticated mathematician. So the definitive article the would fit better when defining a specific mindset. So this is directive tutoring. It will just tell them what type of error they made and what they need to do to fix it, essentially. It will not give the student any practice with choosing the right article for the right noun. So this can help them improve their paper, but it's not going to give them the opportunity to improve their writing process unless on the off chance that they memorize this without doing any practice, which is usually not how teaching works. So we should try to be non-directive when the opportunity allows. It's not always right to be non-directive and wrong to be directive. If you see comma splices 5-10 times in a paper, please, for the first one or two even, model the correction for them, be directive, tell them what's wrong with this and how to fix it. But then after that, you should try to move steadily into directive and give them the opportunity to start making those corrections themselves, because that's how they will really improve their writing process. So let's take a look at some non-directive tutoring. A mindset of a sophisticated mathematician, which are the core of the flexibility of mathematics. So this is extremely non-directive. Is this the correct word form? So this would put the onus on the student to identify that the subject of R is mindset and that this is a singular plural agreement error. You can work this as a spectrum. It's not a pure dichotomy. So we could say, does your verb agree with your subject mindset? So now they would know to look at mindset and look at verb agreement with that subject. We could make this a little bit less directive by removing that so that they have to identify the subject of R themselves. We could take it back to, is this the right verb form, to make it as non-directive as possible. So I like to try and move from directive into non-directive to even more non-directive to make my questions as vague as possible, to start giving the student the chance not just to correct their errors, but to identify the common errors in their writing process. But it's not always right to do non-directive in this place and right to do directive in this place. There's no hard and fast rules for this. You want to judge it based on what the student is demonstrating. So are they demonstrating that they have some skills with subject-verb agreement earlier in the paper? then you should try to be a little bit more non-directive. But if you've seen this error frequently, and this is, the first example of it, you might want to be completely directive. However, if we're trying to get the student the opportunity to improve their writing process and practice with these issues, we should be trying to be as non-directive as possible. So here is an interesting example of some new pronoun usage rules. So APA and MLA updated their pronoun usage rules with gender recently, and this student made an error related to that. No one can achieve his goals alone, after all. So no one can achieve his goals alone, after all. So when the gender of the person or people represented by a pronoun is unclear, both APA and MLA style recommend using they even for a singular pronoun. For example, whose phone is this? They left it in my classroom. That is directive. It gives them the answer, tells them what type of error it is, what rules to follow, and it models how to do that correctly. But you can be non-directive even in cases like this, with a new rule that has a hard and fast answer for why it needs to be a certain way. Do only men achieve goals? If so, using only the male pronoun, his is fine. But if women and gender non-binary people achieve goals too, you need to represent them with your pronouns as well. Here is a website that will explain these rules in detail. At MLA, please take a look. And this website also explains the details for APA by happenstance. So this is a great little website, and it will cover both the bases for APA and MLA. It will put the onus on the student to do a little research themselves. And, again, I just imagine I'm sitting across from this student. What sort of questions do I have to ask to get them to think about how to make their writing a little bit better? And then a nice advantage of working in the text format, we can provide links and give the student the resources that they need to quickly do that research themselves, do that extra review, or even do practice. You can link them to practice websites. It's a nice little advantage of this form. So here is an example with prepositions. So there are a couple cases where I think non-directive tutoring is, while an ideal that we should work towards, it might not always be effective. So with prepositions, particularly for speakers of other languages, or non-native English speakers learning English, they will struggle with prepositions naturally because there are thousands of different contextual combinations of verbs and nouns that will change what preposition is right in a context. Similar non-count nouns versus count nouns, just so much rote memorization involved with learning that aspect of the English language that non-directive tutoring can lead to problems and might not give the student enough to be able to correct their work or understand what's wrong. So here's some non-directive tutoring for this preposition error. Duke wipes off my worries by providing research opportunities to all majors. Sometimes wipes off makes sense, but in this context, that isn't quite the meaning you're looking for. Can you try choosing another preposition? So this is non-directive, but is it effective? Are we confident the student is going to choose the right preposition from all the ones that could be chosen when there's no real rhyme or reason a lot of the time for why a preposition is right or wrong? I say probably not, unfortunately. So a lot of the time you do want to try to be directive with prepositions or count versus non-count nouns, but ideally you want to try to be as non-directive as possible, and there are still ways to kind of ride the middle ground between directive and non-directive tutoring. As I said, it's a spectrum. So here's an example of what I would do here. This preposition choice is great for wiping off a kitchen table, but a bit awkward for the context of worries. There is a preposition that will work though. It starts with the letter A and ends in Y and is 4 letters long. Wipes blank my worries. If you can't think of the preposition that will work, can you try rewriting this part of your sentence instead? And I might add to that, using language you're confident will read correctly. So here I created a little fill in the blank that kind of prompts the student towards picking the right preposition. And that should hopefully be enough to get them to pick the right preposition. But prepositions, non-count nouns, it's a lot of memorization, and you do have to kind of push a little bit more towards directive, I've found. But even when you're doing that, you can give the student opportunities to do a little bit of practice and a little bit of reasoning themselves. And if they've chosen a preposition that would work in a different context, please explain why it would work in that context before saying it's not going to work in this context, so that they can get some practice distinguishing between when to use this preposition and when to use that preposition. So thank you very much. Apologize for going on a little long. My alarm hit me. And I hope this was helpful. You can contact me at the Writing Center if you have questions or leave comments down below. And I hope you have a great day and a great term.